event that I was at that I kind of snuck backstage and was there with John Gordon, spent a little time, and he said that we should meet. So here we are. Justin, welcome to the One Hand at a Time podcast.
Oh, Chris, it's so great to be here, and just appreciate you, your platform, and just how you show up in life. So obviously your audience knows a lot about your book that's coming out in January, and I'm excited to get behind that. And just anytime you're in the Wiley family, we're going to continue to keep pushing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. So, I always have a few questions I like to ask when we get started here. And first of all, I'm the self-proclaimed king of R&D. So I take my questions from other people that have asked them and they looked great, right? So these are some questions that I stole from my mentor, John Maxwell. And what's the greatest lesson you've ever learned, Justin?
That anything great takes time. And I think if you come back and you actually start thinking about it, vision rarely requires immediate action, and even more rare provides immediate results, but always requires extraordinary patience. And so that was like this lesson that I think I've really learned as I've continued to grow and to build myself and stay connected to my calling and continue to steward it well, is realizing that it takes patience and it's a journey, and that every step on that journey is exactly where it's supposed to be. And I think that's the exciting piece, is knowing the race that you're running is the race that you're called to. And the only moment that you start to get into struggles or you start to trip is when you start to look at other people's races and you get to the finish line much slower. So continuing to keep your eyes on your race and realizing that it takes extraordinary patience to create an execution of that vision.
That is so accurate. And I love what Ben Newman says a lot. Aggressive patience is something that I have to follow quite a bit. And I'm reading a book right now called The Gap and the Gain. Have you ever read that book by Dan Sullivan? And he talks a lot about the gap. You're in the gap when you're comparing yourself to other people. There's a no win. It's never going to win there, right? You're always comparing yourself. So the gain is when you compare yourself to yourself. So that's essentially what you just said, which is amazing. The number of successful people I get on here with that have made great strides have a lot of the same answers to that. So I appreciate your transparency there. So in the current state, everything that's going on with with the industry and everything else that we're seeing in the coaching spaces, what are you learning now?
Oh, it's a loaded question. And there's pause here for a reason. And I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it and give you a very thoughtful response. My heart hurts, to be honest with you, when I think about the space. And I've been on a lot of stages. I've been in a lot of places, connected with a lot of people. And I think the best thing to say is just that my heart hurts when you see the content that's out there, when you see the social followings, when you see the large podcast followings. My heart hurts. And the reason is because you have all of this information. You have all of these people who continue to speak and try to pour into people's lives, but yet they're taking these principles and deploying them as the truth, as the gospel, as the solution, the answer, but yet they're leaving the whole truth out of it, which is the biblical foundations that maybe they've heard about before, or wanting to make it their own. And so really what you're doing is you're giving people a cheap substitute at a premium price. And you're continuing, and as I go to these events, as I continue to sometimes partake in these events, sometimes as a speaker at these events, sometimes just as a guest at these events, you see the same type of person over and over and over and over again. And they just keep coming back because there's still a hole. No matter if they make the $100,000, no matter if they make the $1 million, no matter if they build the business, no matter if there's still a hole and a gap that exists inside of them. And so as I continue to see social media and podcasts and book writing, and everybody is able to have a platform today. Everybody is able to have a voice. Everybody is given that opportunity when it maybe isn't necessarily deserved, and you're able to paint a picture for people, and it's getting harder and harder for the good, hardworking people who are seeking answers to defer and figure out the difference between the truth and the deception. And that's, I think, just why when I talk about this, that's why it hurts. My heart hurts when I look at the industry, and the space and the pace at which it's starting to move.
Yeah, so when you say deserve, what do you mean by deserve?
I truly believe that everybody has to have experienced and has to have gone through what it is that they are coaching on. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be the world's leading expert, but you have to have at least been 2, 3, 4, or 5 steps ahead of whoever it is that you're going through. Now, the second thing is that you have to have the fruit in your life. And what I mean by the fruit is, if you're out there speaking on um, creating a holistic life, like a life coach, and you've nailed the business, you've got the $100 million business, you've got the $10 million business, you've got the $1 million business, whatever it is that you're rolling with, that you're operating with, you've got the book deal, but your kids hate you, your
Yeah.
marriage is in shambles, you have 2 mortgages that you're struggling to pay for, your health is in disarray, you've got anxiety through the roof. All of that lives behind the shield. All of that lives behind the curtain. Nobody knows about that. But yet you're standing on stage and talking and giving guidance, when in actuality the fruit that you're eating doesn't actually line up with what you're giving out. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be perfect, but what I'm saying is that you have to have these these principles in alignment. And if the fruit is not great, then you don't really deserve to be planting the seeds. Because when you're planting seeds, you're not going to get an apple if you planted an orange seed. You're not going to get a pineapple if you planted a mango seed. Whatever you're planting, whoever you're planting it from, whoever's speaking into your life, that's what you're going to be getting, which is why I keep my circle very tight from people who I actively allow to pour into my life. And right now there's 3 people: Rich Wilkerson Jr., Stephen Furtick, and Erwin McManus. Those are the 3 people that I allow to speak into my life, that I take into their information, that I communicate and talk with on a regular basis. Why? Because I want the seeds that are planted within me to continue to be nurtured by people who have the fruit in their life, and continue to lean on a biblical foundation and a spiritual foundation, because that's where everything else blossoms from. But the world has told us to take a top-down approach, which is a physical first, whether it's the 6-pack abs first, whether that's the $1 million business first, whether that's the worldly things like homes and cars and influence first. And we are told that that's what matters and that's what's there. But when you lead from that area, it ultimately creates a decay of your mind, and it starts to make you question things and doubt things, and say, am I actually good enough? Am I far enough along? Can I actually do this? Which ultimately creates a poisoning of your heart, which at the end of the day starts to go, man, I've got this massive depression. I'm sad all the time. I'm fearful. I'm confused, which creates separation in spirituality from what it is that you're called to, from what it is that you're supposed to be doing. But when we are deeply rooted in what we're called to do, and we know what that is, and we're leaning in that, it ultimately renews the mind, gives us confidence to step in powerfully and know that we're in the journey, and know that we have to be patient, and know that there's dues to be paid, which ultimately gives us confidence to be able to step into that, which physically allows us to do the things necessary long enough over the right amount of time to get the results inevitably. Because at the end of the day, successful people don't do extraordinary things. Successful people do ordinary things with extraordinary consistency and intentionality. And that's why you see the fruit in their life.
Yep. So I understand exactly what he's saying because we're in the same industry. And first of all, people ask me all the time, why do I have other coaches and stuff on my podcast? Because I'm having an abundance mindset. Somebody may be related to Justin that likes Justin that's on my call more than me. So I invite everybody to step in from the same space. But those of you who don't quite understand, so I'll use some layman terms there. So it'd be like hiring a trainer who's out of shape, right? It'd be having someone who wants to get on stage and talk about adversity that grew up with a silver spoon, right? Those are easier explanations, but I know what you're talking about. Like I had a conversation with a gentleman we spoke about before we got on the call here, and he said that was one of his biggest struggles that they talk about him in the inner circle he's in, which is a powerful inner circle. They talk about the people that are the fakes and the pretenders that get on stage and they're just selling and hyping things up that they have no experience in. And from someone who's newer into the industry, like myself, I mean, I've led and coached and I've done all that for years in the corporate world, but to be going all in now on this type of platform, I ask myself that question all the time. Am I good enough to do what I'm doing? Do I have enough value to bring? So there's a two-prong approach for me. I look at my past, what have I overcome, right? And who am I learning from today? Because anytime I have someone that pays me for my time, I tell them my goal is to build them up to such a high level that I can't coach them anymore, right? But I have a saying that we say down here in the South, you better pack your lunch because I'm going to work really hard to be the best coach I can, and you're going to have to catch me. But I don't pretend that I know all the answers, right? Is that fair, Justin?
100%. But I think I want to speak into that a little bit, Chris, even for you, because it starts with a heart set, and your heart set's in the right place. And so what I'm talking about is it's not people that are like, I'm truly here to impact. I'm truly here to create changes in people's lives for in a very positive direction. And in doing so, it hasn't been the monetary gain or the influence
Mm-hmm.
or the platform that is the driving force behind that. It's the calling that you have on your life, and it's the conviction you have deep inside to actually create change and impact. That's the motivating factor. That's the pull for you. And so right by there, right by that qualifies you. That qualifies you already. On the inverse of what I'm talking about is when it's a pull by the physical change. It's the
Yeah.
pull of the financial gain. It's the pull of the community. It's the pull of the platform. It's the pull of something that's not rooted in that qualification that's deeper inside of you. And that's what saddens me, is because I see so much of that in this space, because everybody has a voice. And because of that, the consumer, the end user, the end person is confused. They don't know what the truth is anymore. And when you don't know what the truth is anymore, it becomes very hard to dissociate and depict what is truth um, and what is falsified. And when that becomes the issue, and you're going to see it more and more, it's only going to get harder with AI. It's only going to get harder with a lot of these new technologies coming out, because not only do you now does now everybody have a voice, but you can make your voice sound like anybody you want. And so that's, I think, the hard part about this is that when we now have to start sorting through that hat, which becomes really difficult.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine, and he's also my speaking coach. His name's Rene Rodriguez. I don't know if you know who Rene is or not, but if you don't, Justin, you should check him out. He's dynamite guy. He's the reason why I started speaking, and he says what most people struggle with is they get on stage and they want to tell a story that's not real.
Yeah.
So it's hard to speak from the heart about something that is not real, that did not happen.
Yeah.
And when you get on, that's why he said people struggle to get on stage and they don't know exactly what to say because they are trying to make things up as they go. But when you speak intentionally from your heart, you're just telling the story of what really happened. And those stories are way more impactful than something that was made up that could be on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
Like, so when I step off stage, I feel good about what I said, even if I blundered, if I did something like I stopped for whatever that is, I feel good about it because I know what I said was all real. Like, how do
Yeah.
you feel when you get off stage? I mean, you've been speaking on some pretty big stages recently. I mean, obviously, we'll make sure everybody has a way to follow you when you get off the call. But I mean, how do you feel when you get off stage? Are you energized? What's that like for you?
I'm always energized. And I think the first question I ask myself when I get off stage is, and I pray and I ask God, did I serve these people the way you wanted me to? That's the first question I always ask. And just like before I get on stage, I say a simple prayer. It's, Lord, let me love these people. Let me love them as they're your people, and make the words I say not be mine, but rather yours. It's my simple prayer every single
Yeah.
time before I step on stage. And so the unique part about this is that I'm not trying to be anybody else other than myself when I get on stage. And I'm not trying to give the message to them that I want to give to them, but rather the message that is already prepared for them. I have a plan, but oftentimes the way that I kind of do a lot of my keynotes is the first 20, 30 minutes has uh, a lot of storytelling and structure to it. But the last 20 to 30 minutes is all improv. And what I mean by that is it's crowd work. It's being able to ask questions of the people there, so that I can truly serve them and I can truly create stories that will relate to them and that will help take them from a state of knowing. This is usually one of my promises. I want to take people from a state of knowing about their bodies to a state of understanding. And if I can get you from knowing to understanding, it's the difference between having to be convinced of something, that something's important, to all of a sudden understanding where you have a conviction that it's important. And so you're leaving that room going, man, I understand something about this vessel, this thing that I'm living in, that I never understood before. And because I knew how now have a new understanding, I can leave this room and not just think about doing something, but I'm actually going to put a new practice, a new behavior, a new habit into place because I know what my body needs and what my body requires. It's not because, oh, Justin said so and it's important and I know what to do now. It's no, I understand it. I understand the deeper interaction with my body. I understand the deeper interaction with this holistic component of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health. I understand that my body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. I understand that the way I've been living actually hasn't been stewarding this thing very well. And that's why I'm running into issues. I understand that the habits and behaviors that I've been ultimately doing is ultimately the lagging effect of my outcomes. Like I'm understanding all that for maybe the first time. And it's these aha moments that are created that ultimately allow everybody to be served in an elevated way and meets each person where they are. And it's not Justin saying something to you, but rather it's a story that's speaking to you and hitting you exactly where it was supposed to in the exact moment that it was supposed to, so that you now have ownership in what you're supposed to take away from this moment. And it was your hour, not mine.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. I love to be on stage and have an outline of what I want to say, but then to read the audience and see what else they need. Right. Like for me, that is like, and that just comes with reps. It comes with reps,
Yeah.
because when you first get on stage, all you're thinking about is, I just got to get through this. I got to make sure I hit everything I'm supposed to say. Right. And then when you get up there and you're comfortable and feeling the audience, it becomes super impactful. Well, we jumped into some of the stuff here real quick, but people are probably going to ask, what qualifies you, Justin, to be saying that? I mean, to talk about the human body and those types of things. You want to go deep there?
Yeah, so long story, really short. So born and raised in Canada, and grew up as a hockey player. Obviously, comes with the territory. And at 11 years old, I just uh, heard from God, heard from the Lord that I was going to redeem the health of the world. And it was like, okay, that's a cool message. What does that mean? And at 12, started to play hockey with 15, 16-year-olds. And my dad said, hey, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And it shifted a mindset for me about, hey, how do I become the most consistent version of myself? What does this look like? And as a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, I started to track heart rate variability. I started to track heart rate. I started to track my sleep quality. I started to track oxygen levels. I grabbed all my blood work from my doctors and got really deep just to understand this thing. And I realized that if my preparation was in pursuit of something better, that my outcomes were inevitable. Meaning there was really only 5 mindsets that you could abide by: impossible, possible, probable, or inevitable. And I knew that the only mindset I wanted to abide by was inevitability. And the only way for me to get there was to create a system that worked, that allowed me to understand my body to immense depths. And so this deep found love and passion for what this was actually all about, and building a life by design, as I called it, really propelled me forward. I'm a 5'9", 5'10" at best, 185-pound kid, and not the most talented, but definitely one of the hardest workers and most prepared, and diligently focused on how I showed up so that I could ultimately perform at the end of the day. That brought me down to the US on a hockey scholarship. I ended up doing a double undergraduate degree in nutrition and exercise science. From there, went and did my master's degree in exercise physiology with a focus in sport performance. From there, did my postgraduate doctoral work in heart rate variability, sleep, and recovery science. And in 2008, really started to lean into putting this into practice in professional settings, ultimately becoming a director in the NHL, and changing the way that we managed health, wellness, and performance for the best athletes in the world. And in 2019, 2020, realized that, hey, this isn't just an athlete problem. This is a human problem. And we have to be able to understand how to manage our bodies, how to understand what's going on so we can build a life by design, because we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And a lot of us have systems that are predisposed for failure, and we're just not aware to them as to how we're living, how we're sleeping, how we're managing stress, how we're managing the environments around us, how we're eating, how we're training, how we're supplementing, how we're hydrating, what our environments around us are like. We're just not paying attention to these things. And when you don't pay attention to them, you end up in a life by default. And because we're in a life by default, we ultimately end up earning our illness and not earning our health. And so these are the things we have to start to have clarity on and understanding of. And at the end of the day, built a system that really empowers people to understand their bodies in a more purposeful and actionable way. And once we can realize that, that's when all of a sudden your outcomes are inevitable. You want to lose weight? It's inevitable. You want to get better energy? It's inevitable. You want to be more mentally clear? It's inevitable. You want to be a more purposeful, intentional leader? It's inevitable. But it requires a system that's so focused on you for an N of one based off your lifestyle, off your body, off these areas. And that's where it changes, because my definition of performance is very different than everybody else's. I usually ask the audience at the beginning, say, hey, if you were to give me 2, 3, 4, 5 words, when you think of performance, what comes up for you? Oftentimes it's results, attaining goals, winning, execution, these types of things. And I'm like, those are all great words. That's awesome. But they're all outcomes. They're all end results. What I see performance as is the capacity and desire to intentionally and consistently behave at a level equal to or greater than your potential. And if we think about that for a second, everybody has the desire to be fit. Everybody has the desire to have the business. Everybody has the desire to have the influence. Everybody has the desire to have the energy, but we don't have the capacity. And it's a capacity issue that we're dealing with. And only through intentional and consistent behaviors that are equal to how we see ourselves will ultimately close, you talk about the gap, will close the gap between your reality and the potential that God has called you to. And so many of us are living with such a massive gap that it's creating this internal frustration, this spiritual discontentment that we're constantly living in, that's creating this, we talk about that hole inside of us, that no matter how great our business is, no matter how big our house is, no matter how many fancy cars we have, we'll constantly be creating this turmoil inside of us because we're not living in accordance to how we are called and how we are designed.
So, I mean, let's start in the beginning with that. I think that the biggest breakdown we have, and you're the expert here, so please direct me. Nutrition is, at least in America, nutrition is so bad for most people. And I mean, it starts there, right? Like what you eat people don't understand it doesn't just affect your waistline, it affects your brain, right? I mean, just on how that works. How do we fix that? Like, I mean, like, how do we fix that? I mean, like, it's easy for someone who, that's not easy, but people that are successful that have the means to hire a coach, that have the, you know, the means to pay for the more expensive foods. It's an easier setup. But what about people that are just starting out? Like, what can they do to make sure they control their life like that?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to a couple of things. So number one is, remember I talked about a level of understanding versus a level of knowing, right? And when you understand your body, you have to understand this main concept. Number one, our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional stress. And the fact that our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress, we have to realize that the body's reaction to stress, real, perceived, positive, negative, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, body doesn't know the difference. It's just programmed to keep us alive. So if there's any form of stressor in our life, the reaction is going to be a shot of norepinephrine, a shot of adrenaline, a shot of cortisol. The stimulus and the response internally is to go sympathetic, meaning fight or flight. And the response of the body is to create inflammation, inflammation markers in the muscles, inflammation markers in joints, inflammation markers in the brain, inflammation markers in the stomach, to ultimately respond to what it was that we did. Well, here's the thing. Just like this bottle has a certain capacity, if I'm constantly pouring into this cup, it's going to start to overflow at a certain point. And that's the same thing that happens to our body. Is our body has a certain capacity and it overflows. And so when it starts to overflow, that chronic stress creates chronic inflammation, creates chronic symptoms that we deem are normal. That's what it looks like to be 50 years old. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it takes to be an executive. That's what it looks like to be a mother. That's what it looks like to be a father. That's what it looks like to manage 15 people. That's what it looks like to lead a company of 500. All these things are lies that the world is telling us. It's not normal to have brain fog. It's not normal to need a nap in the afternoon. It's not normal to eat something and feel bloated. It's not normal to have anxiety. It's not normal to have chronic headaches. It's not normal to have insomnia. It's not normal to have weight gain that's unexplainable. It's not normal to not feel well. None of these things are normal. And the crazy part is, the longer we live in this space that I call fake health, disease-free, but symptom-full, the faster the window closes, and it throws us into this death and disease bucket where we all of a sudden wake up and I all of a sudden have diabetes, or I all of a sudden have some type of chronic illness. Well, you didn't go to bed one night and wake up the next day with diabetes. You didn't go to bed one night and wake up 50 pounds overweight. You didn't go to bed one night and wake up the next day with a chronic illness.
Yep.
It was earned over the course of time, and it was inevitable based upon your habits and behaviors. But we don't have awareness to this. We don't have awareness to how our body's handling stress and strain. And so because of this, we go into death and disease, and chronic illness is the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%. If you start to look at entrepreneurs, executives, and business leaders, it jumps to 79%. And so this is a massive issue, and it's something that we have to create a change in. And so my base level concept to come back to how do you understand your body in a more purposeful and intentional way is to understand the metric of heart rate variability. Heart rate variability looks at the time segments in between your heartbeats, and the more variable it is, the more time in between each beat, not your heart rate, but the time between these beats, is a gauge of whether you're more sympathetic, meaning more fight or flight, or more parasympathetic, meaning more rest and digest, relax state. And it's not an on-off switch. It's not like flicking an on and off a light. It's a dimmer switch, and it's a scale. And so as we look, we want to make sure that the stress and strain that we're exposing ourselves to, the habits and behaviors that we're regularly, consistently doing, intentionally or not, is in good balance, is in good rhythm, is in good symmetry, so that our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are ultimately replenishing one another. And if you're looking at heart rate variability, this is now your language and your marker every single day that says, hey, Chris, you're adapting really well to the stressors in your life. Or, hey, Chris, you're not adapting well to the stressors in your life. So a higher heart rate variability means that you are adapting really well. The habits, behaviors that you have in place, the metrics you have in place are working. If you have a low heart rate variability, it means they're not. And there's 8 levers that we get to pull, 8 levers that we get to be highly intentional around: exercise, nutrition, hydration, sleep, environment, immune function, self care, and mindset. And these 8 levers that we develop certain habit structures and systems into empowers us to take ownership of this life by design. And we're no longer just going day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year as taking on whatever life throws at us, but rather we have an intentional system that we can now look at and go, man, the month of December has been just crushing me. I've been traveling a ton. I've been changing time zones 3 or 4 times. It's been really hard on my body. I need to create I need to change some behaviors for the next 2 or 3 weeks to give myself some capacity back and poke some holes in this cup so it can drain. So all the stress I'm adding, I can take on more. But oftentimes it's just like, no, we got to grind harder. You got to work harder. You got to do more. You got to just keep going. You just can't be you can throw whatever expletive you want in there. But how do you continue to do this sustainably is by understanding your body, stewarding it well, and creating a system and a life by design that's built off of data and feedback and information from your body, because nobody knows your body better than itself. And that's why I always say, I trust Jesus, but for everything else, show me the data, because data doesn't have feelings. It doesn't care about my emotions. It doesn't care about how I'm doing. It's just going to give me a tangible number that I can then be empowered to take action on.
All right. So the $1,000,000 question there is, how do we track that stuff? Justin, how do you track it?
I mean, easiest, every wearable device has it, whether it's your Oura Ring, whether it's your Fitbit, whether it's your Polar heart rate strap, whether it's your Whoop band, whether it's your Apple Watch. They're all tracking heart rate variability. And so a lot of your listeners might have an Apple Watch, let's just say, because that's going to be there you go. It's the governing body of everything.
Yes.
And so if you have an Apple Watch, open up your Apple phone, your iPhone, go to Apple Health, go to the bottom, click on Browse. You'll have, you can do it right now, Chris.
I'm doing it right now while we're on the show. Why not?
I love it. We're going to do it live. This will be like one of my
I'm going
talks.
to
It'll be
Apple
like
Health, you
a
said?
little bit of improv.
Apple
But yeah,
Health.
open up Apple Health and go to the bottom right corner, click on Browse. In the middle, you'll find a little area. It says Heart. Click on Heart. And then you're going to see a value. It says heart rate variability. Click on that. And then you're going to be able to see your day, your week, your month, and then I think your 6 month and your year. It'll break it up something like that. And so what you want to look at is, I want you to go to before I give the ranges of where they should actually be, tell me, actually, you know what? I'm going to give you the ranges first and then tell me where you're at. So if you're a 40-year-old individual,
I'm 51.
You should have,
so I'm 51.
Perfect. So if you're 50 or greater, you should have a heart rate variability average of about 45 to 75. That's what we want to be. That's what we want to see. And so if it's below that, it's the language in which your body's communicating, hey, I'm not adapting to stress and strain really well. And so now, Chris, I want you to click on your month kind of pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I want you to give me your month average.
32.
I want you to kind of click on your highest number. So just kind of point to it and it'll give you what was your highest number and what date was that?
41. And that was November 14th, yesterday.
Awesome. And then click on your lowest one and give me that date.
12, Halloween.
Okay. Awesome. This is so great. So Chris, yesterday, can you describe your day for me yesterday and the day before? Just kind of talk me through what your day consisted of, like your diet, your exercise, your lifestyle, the things maybe you did for yourself, your sleep time, all these things.
Yeah. So yesterday, starting on Monday, I had some issues with my hypertension. I have hypertension. So my blood pressure was incredibly high on Monday and Tuesday. Yesterday, though, in the morning, I'm sorry, it was high last week. And Monday was still high. Yesterday, I wasn't feeling that well after I had breakfast. So I did nothing yesterday. I shut my day down, and I did zero. I didn't work out. I didn't do anything. Today's been a better day for me personally. I don't know what my score is, but like I went and I had to do a blood dump because my hemoglobin was so high. So I did a blood dump today. I feel so much better after I did that because my hemoglobin was almost 19,
Wow.
and it was causing me some other issues, obviously.
Yeah. So here's the cool thing, and I'll speak into this a little bit. So you talk about this, and you've shared with me a little bit of what's going on in your life right now. You've got a baby on the way, your house
Yes.
flooded, you're in an Airbnb, you've got all of these stressors, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all being poured on you right now. It ultimately came off with hypertension and high blood pressure. That's ultimately your end result. Well, we've seen it in a really low heart rate variability score. Like your body's literally telling you, man, Chris, like I'm trying to do the best as I can here, but I'm being stretched in 19 million different ways. And all of a sudden you shut everything down yesterday. And some of us don't have the luxury to do that, but you actually took time to do probably some self-care work. You probably
Mm-hmm.
maybe got a nap in. You probably got
Yep.
a really good sleep last night. You focused on a lot of these things. You probably took time to make a good meal. You
And
probably connected with
just
your
FYI
spouse.
too, I don't wear this at night, so I don't know if that throws the score off or not. But
No.
I don't wear it at night.
So you did all of these things yesterday, and we end up with our highest score, and it's even higher than what our average is for the last month. Conversely, now talk to me about Halloween.
I traveled. I flew that day. I was on a plane. I flew to Charleston, South Carolina. I had meetings as soon as I got there, prepping for the conference that I was involved with a couple days later. So I was on the go all day with stuff. I did get a workout in. I worked
You're
out that
probably up
afternoon.
late though, right? Up late.
Yeah, I had very little sleep the night before because my flight left super early in the morning, and I just don't sleep well when I'm in hotels.
Yep.
I just don't. So
And so it's such a great point. And so these are the things that we would start to talk through. And so we'd be like, hey, this makes total sense, Chris. Like, how do we start to develop this? And so what we'd actually start to coach you through is, what does a travel framework look like? What does it look like to be able to make our home environment on the road look more like this? Can we bring a pillowcase that's with us that's actually the same one at home? Can we put a different aroma in the room that actually meets that? Can we change the temperature in the room so it meets that? Could we have a dark out mask and earplugs? Can we have some type of nasal strip that opens up our nasal passage so we sleep a little bit better? Can we have a night routine that actually optimizes and feels the same as at home? Can we start
something
to,
just popped in my brain. I had alcohol that day too.
there you go.
I
And
drank.
another one. So
I had
alcohol
like
is a
four. I had like
major.
four drinks that day, and I very rarely ever drink, but I had four drinks that day.
Yep. And that was going to be my next question for you. But alcohol is a huge suppressor of heart rate variability. It's a massive stressor on your body because your body is having to process the toxins that are going through. And so this is what I'm saying is, like, I can't make this up, right? Like, I didn't know what you did on those days, but
Mm-hmm.
the data tells us. And so now you have this awareness tool as to what this looks like. But now we also have a system that we can start to look at these 8 controllables or these 8 foundational principles, and which ones are we, and this is where it requires honesty and awareness, is which one of these 8 or which 2 of these 8 are we not actually optimizing today? And a lot of them are in habits and behaviors. But then we can start to get a little bit deeper. We can start to do cellular testing on you, Chris, and look at, hey, what's your cellular micronutrient deficiency? And if your micronutrient deficiencies in B12, vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin K, iron are at high levels, remember, your body is only able to pull from your cell what's there. So it's very different than blood serum, very different than the typical blood testing you're going to get from your doctor or 99% of those supplementation companies out there, because we not need to go to the cellular level, because you could have high levels of vitamin D, vitamin K, iron, folate in your blood, but you don't have the precursors to pull them into your cell. And so if you don't have them in your cell, it doesn't matter if they're in the blood serum, because your body still thinks, hey man, I'm starving for vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin B, and vitamin A. And it's going to continue to stress because it doesn't actually have them. It's deficient. And so we need to replenish the micronutrient deficiencies. And that's when we can get specific into true custom supplementation for you. That's when we can get really specific into your nutrition and what needs to fall into that space. But these are the things that we want to know about. These are the things that we want to build a baseline and a foundation that's built on rock, which is our habits, our behaviors, and our lifestyle that are all determined by heart rate variability, because now it's personable to you. And then the next layer up is our testing. Okay, let's get this done so that we realize what's happening. And then the final layer is the tools that we use. What can we actually start using if we don't, if we live in a city where we get long winters? Well, you might want to start to invest in a red light, because red light is great for mitochondrial health and establishing new environments. If you are in a cold environment and it's easy just to put a bathtub outside or a bin outside and do a cold plunge on days that your HRV is above your 3-day average. Because again, if it's below your 3-day average, we already know you're in a sympathetic state. So there's no reason to put you into a deeper sympathetic state. Let's choose something different. Same thing with when do we do a cold shower? Let's not do it on days our HRV is depleted. Let's do it on days that it's elevated so that our body
So
has capacity.
just so you know, I have a cold plunge right in my garage. I did not cold plunge yesterday, but I did cold plunge at 4 a.m. before I hopped on a plane October 31st. I did sit in there and I've seen your videos about the 11 minutes a week. I'm way more than that sometimes, but I did 6 minutes that morning at like 48 degrees.
Yeah.
So I'm interested more about the science on that too, because there's so much stuff out there. I know how I feel when I get out of the cold plunge. I feel amazing. Like I really do. Like, I mean, I don't drink, I'm not a coffee drinker. I feel energized when I get out of there, but
So let me come back to that, because there's a cause and effect, right? Chris, if I was to come up to you and I was to smack you across the face as hard as I could, it would wake you up and you would have that same exact reaction as you have a cold in cold exposure, because I'm activating your sympathetic nervous system. And if I smacked you in the face as hard as I could, you'd be like, man, that hurt, but I feel sharp. I feel mentally acute. I feel clear. I feel ready to go. And that would slowly peter off over the course of the day, because your neurons slowly come back to where they're supposed to be. It's no different than the cold plunge. Zero difference, because it's just a neurological effect. It's a neurological change. It's a neurological stimulus. And so what I want to make sure of is that, and then this is what I want people to understand, is a cold plunge is still a stressor on your body. It's having to go through a neurological process, which is why the Soberg principle, they talk about all the time that you don't need any more than 11 minutes a week to get maximal benefit from a cold plunge, from a physiological state. Anything over 11 minutes is going to be unnecessary stress on your body and adding more stress to your cup that, quite frankly, isn't necessary. Same thing when we talk about temperature. The data all shows that anything less than 60 degrees is going to have a benefit when it comes to a cold plunge. Now, does that mean you need to be at 58, 57, 56? No, you can slowly turn it down, especially as you get more seasoned and all of these things, as you start to expose yourself more to it. But again, it's just unnecessary to jump in for a first timer or when you're new to this at 32, 33, 34 degrees and just grin and bear it and
yeah,
muscle through it.
yeah, it's
And
tough when you jump in
and
first time if you do it that cold. Yeah.
and it comes back to it is all of the, and this is where kind of will come full circle, is everyone in the professional development space right now has no idea about the science of all of these things that you're getting into. And they're like, cold plunging, it's the best thing for you. You go to all these retreats now, they've got these bins full of ice up to the top with water in it. And you've got people jumping in and going in for 3-4 minutes, and they get out and they're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm frozen, but I feel so good. I feel so awake, because they've never experienced something like that. But yet you don't actually realize that if you expose them to this constantly, it increases risk of common colds and flus, because it starts to drop immune system. In times of heavy stress, travel, holidays, more people around, seasonal changes, it again opens up opportunity for sickness and all of these other things. Where instead, if you got 11 minutes a week, you did it in a very purposeful, temperature driven state, and you did it based upon HRV, not only would it create a benefit for you in immune system, but ultimately you'd probably eliminate getting sick longer because you're actually activating your system when it needs it. And so you're doing everything in a personalized and intentional way. And remember what I said, the most successful people in the world, they don't do extraordinary things. They do ordinary things extremely diligently in consistency and intentionality. And that's the really it in a nutshell. And that's what we stand for, is helping people understand and realize what they need to do for their body in N of one solutions, so that when you think about performance, when you think about what you need, what you require, it's not a broad brushstroke, but rather, what does Chris need today, based off what his lifestyle is creating, based on what his current situation is, where he's not living at home, he's got a baby due in a couple weeks, in a month, and he's got so much stress going on. Man, we got to do something different for you than somebody else who's got everything going on and they're at the peak of their year a little bit, and their kids are moved out of the house and the renovations were done 3 years ago and everything's great. Very different and very different needs.
That's some great information. So let me ask, so essentially, if my HRV is as low as it is, um, I should not be getting in the cold plunge right now when it's that low.
So what I typically say, rule of thumb, is if your HRV is below your 10-day average, so if your 10-day average is 27, I would not get in the cold plunge when it's below 27, but only get in it when it's above. And that literally becomes like your barometer. Hey, wake up, where am I at? On days that it's below 27 and you're like, man, I want to get in, great. Maybe get in for 60 seconds, shorter than what you usually would, because the
Mm-hmm.
stimulus that your body has to adapt to isn't as great. Maybe
Sure.
just get in, dunk your whole body and your head, and then get up, and it takes you 15, 20 seconds. So you still get that initial shock, but your body doesn't have to adapt to the cold thermogenesis as much as it typically would. Or if you have the ability, with mine, obviously, we've got a thermoregulator on it, so I can bump it up to 52 or 53, and the temperature changes um, in about 15 to 20 minutes. And so if I still want to get in and my HRV is below, maybe I'll just throw the temperature up a little bit, or just throw my arms and legs in, or my extremities a little bit. So there's things that you can change and manipulate it, but it's not just, you said you have to get in and you have to operate that way. The David Goggins effect, be hard or you're worth nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't abide by that. And I think that again comes back to that toxic personal development hardness that this world that we live in, that everybody thinks that if I didn't do it, I'm a failure. Now I'm not going to be able to perform well today. I'm not going to be able to do my work today. I'm not going to be able to send all the emails I need to today. I'm not going to be able to break through today. I'm not going to make my millions. Oh, just because you didn't get in the cold plunge. Are you kidding me? Like, think about that for a second. And we've gotten hung up on these things rather than looking at our body in a very unique and personalized way, and developed intentional and purposeful habits around what our body requires. And ultimately, that's what determines our success or not.
So one more thing I'll throw on there as a question: what about the sauna? Is the sauna the same way with our HRV?
Yeah, really great question. So no, yeah, it's the sauna is actually completely different. Where um, I highly encourage it every single day. So it's 100+ minutes a week is what your goal should be. So if you can hit 100 minutes of sauna exposure a week, somewhere in that 185 to 210 range, in a traditional sauna, obviously in an infrared, you're going to be running somewhere between 145 and 170, but the same 100+ minutes of sauna exposure a week. And what that does is creates these heat shock proteins in the body that increases your immune system and immune response by actually killing off a lot of the dead cells that exist inside of you, ones that are malnourished, ones that are old, ones that need just to kind of die off. And then because you're sweating so profusely, it creates this cleansing and detoxification in the body in a really powerful way. So sauna, I encourage every single day. Again, just being mindful of time and duration, and shooting for that 100 minutes a week, but cold, a little bit more selective as to when you're using it.
Yeah, I used to do, before I got my cold plunge, I had a membership to this place that had a cryo machine and a sauna, and I would do both of those. Um, but the sauna, I really enjoyed the sauna. I would go in there for like 18 to 20 minutes, and it would be 100, and it was infrared, so 135, 140. Sometimes it'd get a little hotter than that, but I mean, it was just, I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
It's
dynamite.
amazing when you get a deep cleanse like that, how good you feel.
Well, that's a ton of information, Justin. I had no idea we would get this deep into it, but I'm loving it. To the point of, I want to figure out what I need to do to get on a plan with you, and then we can come back in like 4 or 5, maybe 6 months, and show everybody what happened. I think that would
Yeah.
be amazing to do that. So, my listeners, what's the best way to connect with you if they want more information about what you have going on here? I mean, obviously, we'll put it in the show notes as well, but some people don't like to read, so let me tell me what you got.
Yeah, really two places. So number one is Instagram. Post a ton of content there. It's me answering all the DMs. That's one of the things, again, I come back to, just authenticity and transparency. So it's always me in the background. So it's at Justin Roth, ROETH. And then if you want more information about Own It and what we're doing, just ownitcoaching.com. And you can find all the information about programming, our podcast, and any other thing that you need from there.
Yep. Man, what a pleasure to have you on here. It's amazing how you meet people just randomly backstage, guys. It's funny because when I walked up and started talking to him, I complimented him on his cane shoes, because I have a pair on right now, actually. And we had a brief conversation about those. That's a whole nother thing, but canes are the deal. Like, if you travel and you don't fly in your canes, you're missing it, man. You're missing yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah. Thanks again, Justin.
Appreciate you, Chris.
Thank you for tuning into the One Hand at a Time podcast. Please make sure you like and share the episode, and we'll see you next time here at the One Hand at a Time podcast. Make it a great day.